There you go, Natalie. Go ahead, Natalie, go first.
Okay, so from my understanding is when you're working with different departments across the team with one goal. So I might be working with department A, B, and C, but we all have the same goal, but we're working cross-functionally to achieve that goal.
There you go. Very good, Natalie. How about you, Claudine?
A cross-functional person is someone who has multiple skills, so multiple skill sets. So you're able to, maybe in layman's terms, you can cook, you can boil water, you can mend, you can do gardening. So someone who has multiple
trades kind of deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks for that, Claudine. Go for it, Say.
Right. Okay, cross-functional team is a team that has every team member having more than one skills, has different skills on the areas that are needed for the development of that product. And every member of that team can work on different areas of that team. So for instance, if you're having a parallel slicing of stories, and then everybody can work from top to the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's you guys pretty much summed it up. What cross-functional team is, right? It's basically, and it's this scenario, right? Basically, as in the context of, let's say, Scrum and Agile Teams, there is a tendency to be in silos, as presented here. And what you want from your team is to work across these silos. So there's within a team, you can have different aspects, different specialties, right? Generally speaking. And so a cross-functional team then is a team with all these elements, and then they're actually working together. And then in this case, we're looking for these teams to actually produce something together. So in this presentation, this is a simple concept in itself. However, it gives you, I'm going to introduce some things that are pretty basic and maybe a little bit advanced for those who are, thirsty, those who are coming in as, aspiring Scrum Masters, or even, I would just call you guys Agile practitioners. But this is a very important concept in Agile knowledge, so to speak. So cross-functional basically is what was described, different elements in the team working together, putting out value. So there's different ways you can talk about that. So here's one definition of an Agile team, and this is from the Scale Agile framework. Agile teams have all the skills necessary to define, build, test, and deploy value in short iterations. They call it iterations. You can also call it sprints. They're empowered, focused on shared goals to deliver and sustain value to customers. They can be software teams, hardware teams, business teams, operation teams, support teams, or cross-cutting team of multiple disciplines, right? So this is where it gets kind of interesting. So you can actually deviate from this. And then there's also a subsection called like team topologies. Team topologies where you have different teams and what they do. But we won't go into that. We won't go into that today, but basically I wanted to have us take a look at this Agile team. And basically an Agile team is a cross-functional team. So basically Agile teams, they center around value, right? So in this diagram here, you can see how a feature is requested and in the team itself. So basically what you see is the team basically is responsible from define, build, validate, and release value. So when we talk about cross collaboration, cross-functional, that's kind of what we mean. What we mean is that these teams are centered around basically all the agile teams that you're ever going to be, all the agile teams you'll be servicing would be these teams that could produce a product, right? You have all that you need. Basically, if you look at what we were talking about, what an agile team is, it's centered on it's actually, your team is centered on what the product that it can produce, right? But within the team, there's different functions. And there's functions, again, when you think about holding on to your team and grooming your team and supporting your team or leading your team, you really want to think about it in terms of value. How do you get your team to cohesively deliver value? So value streams are defined by the steps, the people, the flow of information, and the material necessary to deliver customer value. So that's pretty much it. So basically, again, looking at what our teams do in software development, they're dishing out increments of value. So that's what that definition is about. Any questions? Am I going too fast? Going once.
I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate. I know we're talking about what a cross-functional team look like, especially in an agile environment. But can you take us into a bit like a deep dive into what would that look like in a real agile world? What is reality? And then how can we transform a team into being cross-functional? How does that look like?
How do we transform a team? Yeah, I'll get to that. Basically, what you try to do when you talk about cross-functional, an agile team is a cross-functional team. And if your team doesn't have, well, basically, if there's not different hats on a team, I don't know what you call that as far as an agile team is, because that team, again, has to produce a product. All right. So basically, you as a Scrum Master perhaps are not really responsible for the formation of your team. You can advise, but you're not really responsible. If you get it to a certain level where you're actually forming teams, if this is how they will look at it. They look at the feature that they're trying to produce. And then the teams that are then formed are the ones that can produce that, what they believe anyway, that can produce that product. So they basically, what you have on teams is the talent that are accompanied, that the company decides that's where they will put full of value. And you as a Scrum Master, you try to get the most out of that. And I'll get to that in a moment. Anybody else? So there's two concepts that when we look at how our teams now, how would you even look at, just as Victoria was kind of suggesting, a team that's not really cross-functional, a team that is kind of I guess a better word for it would be unbalanced, right? There's no cohesiveness. How does that look like, right? So as far as Victoria's point, so here, this is a very plain diagram, right? This is a very plain diagram, and what this diagram is showing is that where this is starting, right? So basically, the numbers that you see here are reviewers, right? They're reviewing a product. And so you can see from start to finish, right? From start to finish, how that looks like. And for example, basically when you see it starts at 1 and it ends at 2, it's circling back to start. That's what it is. So basically what's happening here is that as far as this work, this is a very simple example. Work is supposed to be reviewed by 7 reviewers. So what happens is that one will review it and then pass it to the other reviewer. The reviewer now has the option of sending it back if they find something they don't like. If they see something they don't like, they send it back. So it starts all over again until it satisfies what one reviewer is, and then it keeps going, right? So that's kind of what it looks like when you have an asynchronous processing. Asynchronous means happening at a different time. Synchronous means happening at the same time. So when we think about that, it's when you have cross-functional teams are able to operate in small cadences. And that they do so because, again, they know how to work in cadence. For example, right? Good real world examples, right? Your emergency room in a hospital. An emergency in a hospital, basically you have a triage. If you ever been to an emergency room, you know, I've actually worked in a hospital. And basically you have a triage of people that are coming in. Of course, there's urgency here because it's an emergency room. People need to get in, they need to get service, right? So you have a triage. You have a nurse that's basically your gatekeeper taking in these patients. And there you got, there you have one role that's being played. This nurse now, this triage nurse now has to prioritize. You see, basically that triage nurse now kind of determines based on what she's learned about a patient, takes in the patient, does a quick examination, and based on the severity of whatever is going on, it's basically that information is transferred to the rest of the staff. Now, the rest of the staff, of course, in an emergency room, they are also responsible for other patients that are taken care of. There are people, I mean, you could think about it. You got gunshot wounds, you got strokes, you got heart attacks, you got broken legs. All these things are happening. People are taken care of in different roles, all right? These things are happening all at once, right? Asynchronous will mean that unless we finish with one patient, the one patient is taken care of and then moving on, that's basically an example of something that can't happen at the same time. Basically, when you're looking at teams, you want a team that is like if you're beginning, a sprint, for instance. Everybody has a role. They're working from day one on an item. Basically, everybody is working on something and that they're producing something at the end. Things are working at the same time. There's test cases being created. There's code being developed. There's tests for the code being developed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one emergency room. And another one is an airport runway, right? Here's another example whereby things are happening, have to happen at the same time. This is what, and different roles are being displayed at the same time. So again, I don't have to describe it, how airplanes are landing, taking off, loading passengers, being fueled. You got bags going into the plane. All these things are happening at the same time. And a cross-functional team, you basically have everybody working at the same time, making sure that, again, the end result is achieved. So this is a clue on what exactly I talk about. As Scrum Masters, we're kind of familiar with the CFD, or the cumulative flow diagram. And the cumulative flow diagram, it kind of shows, again, queue size, lead time, inefficient flow, don't work, efficient, all this other stuff. And here on the side here, again, it's the same thing. When ideally, when you have teams that are very cohesive and collaborative in how they, produce and how they work together and how they're able to produce something at the end, these kind of graphs are apparent. You have short queue lengths and more work done in less time. Here you have the queues are getting large, not enough is being done. The throughput, the graph is kind of jacked up. I know that's kind of very, very primitive kind of drawing, but I was looking for something that kind of displays what exactly that looks like as far as teams that are not really that cross-functional, how they operate. So at the end, how do I lead? Right? How do I lead? Yeah, you first have to establish cadence, right? So one way of establishing cadence, I mean, especially if you guys are just starting to learn Scrum, about your ceremonies. Your DSUs have to start at the same time. You have to establish when internal reviews are happening, when refinement sessions are happening, when retrospectives are happening. You'll be surprised where there's not these elements happening on a team, whereby the team doesn't know when the next refinement meeting is going to happen. Like it's supposed to happen on whether it's like an every Wednesday or an every Thursday sort of deal. Like it is expected. It's not waiting for, so basically everybody attends that meeting. It's not determined by, any change in schedule based on individuals or what have you. So that's how you lead. You want to establish that cadence. Preach communication. And this can be a talking point. You could insert it, briefly in your DSUs, or more importantly, sometimes in your retrospectives. You go into your retrospectives and you make that an element, make that, you try to draw something. You always want to, in your retrospectives, you always want to kind of get some idea, right? That from an agile point of view, how, what you can use for your team to make them more agile, make them more, in this case, cross-functional. Establish flow. Again, this pretty much goes with the preaching of communication. You can have bottlenecks that happen in your team. Basically, if the communication is not there, these bottlenecks come where there's there's basically work to be done, and before you know it, you have work in progress. So long lead times, and that's something that was kind of, I could have gone further in describing in the CFD diagram. That when you have long lead times, this shows that the flow of value is not happening in your agile team in a cohesive kind of way. So that's kind of what you want as your Scrum Master, as a servant leader for your team. Establish flow. Peer review. Now, peer review, you definitely want the team to be able to do like an internal review, even pairing. So basically, pairing with another developer, or having even just a presentation, or just it's a demo. Basically, you can demoing within a team, and encouraging that in your team to demo your a work product that you did, or some feature that you developed, or even a strategy that's happening, or an enablement that's happened. That's definitely how you lead. You want to encourage that on your team. And self-direction derives from self-motivation. Again, so basically, once we establish most of what we're talking about here, what happens is that now you're kind of encouraging your team to develop innovative ways to even work together. It's almost magical in a sense. and that once they start to be more innovative in their approaches, because now you have a cohesive group of people, they begin now to be more self-motivated. And a self-motivated team member is a self-directed team member. And most of the stuff, again, is derived from the Agile Manifesto. Basically, so like it says here, we are uncovering better ways to developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software, customer collaboration over this, responding to change over following a plan. And there's others, but again, what this means, what I wanted to just show here is that, a lot of these elements, most of what the Agile Manifesto is about addressing teams and the aspect of the team, which is cross-functional. An Agile team is cross-functional. There's build, test, review, build, test, deploy on most teams, if not all. And so the Agile Manifesto kind of centers on, promoting these things on Scrum Agile teams. All right, so I'm coming to the end of this presentation. Basically, these are a few books that I use, that I've read in my journey as a Scrum Master. Basically, you'll find out you're gonna read a lot, and then this is where you guys are in luck, because you chose basically an avenue where you could do a lot of reading and it's beneficial. Right? So principles of product development flow, project to product, drive, the surprising truth of what motivates us, and of course, what we're doing here is software development, right? What is actually, it gives you a really good idea, and again, it focuses on flow. Scaled Agile actually tries to introduce it, and I see a lot of it being copied from this book. All right, so it really describes that flow of value that I'm talking about. So project to product, and especially if you are really to articulate how you are as a Scrum Master, right? This will actually help you, right? To actually articulate what you do as a Scrum Master, this will help you a lot. So project to product, and of course, principles of product development flow it's more technical. It really centers on the technical aspects of teams and software development. It talks, it's a little bit tilted to like engineering. So you're gonna find a lot of engineering examples there and more mechanical stuff there. So it could be a hard read, but those kinds of books I kind of flip over to find the relevant information that I need, because basically Agile didn't start with software development. It started, a while ago when we were in manufacturing, right? So that kind of plays into that. Drive is a great book. Basically, if you're looking into, because you're a servant leader, you're trying to, you're basically, one of the principles is you want a motivated team. And basically you're trying to figure out ways to talk about motivating your team, how it is. And again, it's a surprising truth what motivates us. There's a good example about how, like, Wikipedia is a free resource. People contribute it for free. However, it is the largest encyclopedia in the world, and it's done for free. They're asking for donations, but donations doesn't keep it there. It's just the value that is produced is actually, the inputs are actually free, And so you get that from this book. And you'll be surprised at what motivates us. It's not money. It's innovation. It's the desire for increasing knowledge and all this other stuff. So that's one book that kind of highlights it perhaps in a nice way. And Scaled Agile, free. That's another free resource. Basically, like I said, it's Scaled. I should type it up in the chat. It's got agileframework.com. Basically, when I was a BA, and they kind of pushed me into the Agile because I used to be a BA and a business analyst in waterfall projects all the time. And one day they kind of dumped me in this Agile project, and it was just, everything was different, right? And I was looking for resources, and I fell upon that, and I've been using that ever since. And then I went ahead and got certified in Scrum, and eventually I became a full-time Scrum Master. So that's why I chose that. Any other questions?
I have another question, but I'll wait for others to ask their questions first.
Anyone else? Oh, well, go ahead, Marlena.
Okay, thanks. I guess my last question would be, we'll be starting INP sprint tomorrow for my team. That's innovation and planning for those that don't know. What do you recommend? I know cross-functionality is something that I would like to work on for my team. I have a team of 16 developers, which is pretty huge, but what do you suggest I should work on first with my team to help them to become more cross-functional?
All right, so you say on your team you have only 16 developers.
Yeah, I have 16 developers, yes.
And they all, they basically, they develop the same thing, or like they're all Java developers. They're all, well, how's that makeup look like?
Well, we do have, I do have about 3 full stack developers. Then I do have others that work on UI work, and a couple of QA testers on a team as well.
Okay. So there you go. So yeah, you have a cross-functional team. So basically, again, like I get criticized on well, not criticized, but I got a remark. I get it a couple of times, like, why I talk about communication so much. That's one thing you want to continue to do, is always vouch for communication. And one way to go about that is peer reviews is what I use. Basically, I will even set aside if something is done, let them do a short demo right there in the DSU. If you can time box it well enough, you can do that. I mean, with 16 developers, you have a pretty large team, but I'm pretty sure you can either that, or you can put it in a cadence where you can actually do that. You know, there's another thing I did, like with stories. So basically, for each story, I created a chat. And this helps a lot, because I used to run 2 teams. I did it once with one team, and I did it with the other. And I noticed, like, if these things were in a chat, some things like your bottlenecks that I was referring to don't happen on my team. That actually, per story, I have a chat. So I'll put the story, I'll label it, I'll put up everybody there and myself. That helps with that kind of discussion on stuff. So people, maybe they're not too forward on the DSU, they will chat about it. There's a back and forth. Again, value is being delivered at the end. So that's it. So you always want to promote communication, yeah, just always be there. Always have a one-on-one with your team, and you can actually continue to ask your teams to, like, work together. Pair programming is also good. And getting your team to work together as far as pair programming for, like, your junior staff or what have you.
Okay, thanks. That's excellent tips. I do like the idea that you brought forth about maybe having us do demos and DSU if time allots for it. But I do like, so maybe that's something I could start. Yep. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else? Anyone else?
Humphrey, let me just add something. I don't know the lady who asked the question, but another way which is very important, which I experience in my team. So I have like close to 16 people. I'll have a PI coming up. One of the things we do is we do the mock planning, where we show what we have to do for each of the iterations. That way, it's going to help. So you gather all your stuff before that. You guys run it and look at the way it is. I know with that number of people, communication cross communication will be somehow difficult. But with the mock session, you'll be able to cut the T's and dot the I's. That way, it's going to help.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Jamaica. And something just came to me. So recently, this is something new that I tried, right? So it was, again, it was on the, this is on what I have, we work on the same. So it's during our IP sprint before the PI planning. And I've developed a matrix, right, on team competency. Basically, I put I put their names on the top row, so there'll be the names will be the columns and different skills on the vertical here. So basically, and then I'm asking them to rate themselves, right? And I told them that I wasn't going to share it. This is like a team-focused thing. This is only between us. We're basically just looking like how confident are we on different skills. And it was shocking, kind of, because you would think one is good at this and another. And then also, it's also surprising, like some people say they're good at one skill set, that not. And so basically, that helps in the conversation, right? Especially if they know it's just between us and we're just talking here on what skills that we would like to acquire, what skill sets do we need to get from like outside or even within the team. So a team competency matrix is that's something that you can actually use. And I wish I would have thought of that when I put up this presentation so that I could be a little bit more descriptive of that. But yeah, you can also look at doing that.